Life by a Harvard psychologist and medical Dr. Waldinger, Robert Waldinger. And well, let's introduce the panel here. Are we missing someone? Where is? Oh, there you are. You're one of our panelists is busy doing some.
Do you want to keep running?
Thank you. Jerry Pettit, Dan Cox, and Eleanor Cox. And we are going to talk about, you may want to move a little closer because this is not going to be mic'd. Or we might ask someone to go up to the mic anyway. But
pull the mic over.
Might be able to pull out.
okay. What am I? Hold on.
Hey, Dan, might be able to pull that up.
Out of the stand?
Yeah, we can move it. We're going to move it. Okay, we're going to start with a brief summary of the book, which I'm going to ask Dan Cox to read. And this gives you a pretty good idea of what we want to talk about and involve you in the process. So at any time during this discussion amongst the four of us here, jump in if you like. Question, comment, observation. Dan?
This is, did you write this?
Yeah, well, it's my summary.
Okay, it's about the summary of the book, The Good Life. Over time, we develop a subtle but hard-to-shake feeling that our life is here, now, and the things we need for a good life are over there or in the future. Always just out of reach. Lula Barber has referred to this as destination addiction. The good life is a complicated life for everybody. Why? Because a rich life, a good life, is forged from precisely the things that make it hard. Good relationships keep us healthier and happier, period. The Harvard study that this book is about is not retrospective, it is prospective. The participants are asked about their life as it is, not as it was. What makes a good life? One way to find some answers to this question might be to simply ask people what would make them happy, and then find commonalities. But one hard truth that we would all do well to accept is that people are terrible at knowing what is good for them. There are many, but chief among the myths is the idea that happiness is something you achieve, as if it were an award you could frame and hang on the wall, or as if it were a destination. And after overcoming all the obstacles in your way, you will finally arrive there and then just hang out for the rest of your life. Aristotle's term eudaimonia refers to a state of deep well-being in which a person feels that their life has meaning and purpose. When Aristotle developed this idea, he was drawing on his observations of the world, but also on his own feelings, the same feelings we experience today. The more you give to others, the greater your abundance, said Lao Tzu. There's a big problem in that the good life may be a central concern for most people, but it is not the central concern of most modern societies. It is very difficult to figure out what really matters. Relationships matter. And that, as I read the book, it came to me that is the biggest point for what Waldinger was getting to, and his co-author, if I may. This is based on a Harvard study that is a longitudinal study. It's been going on for over 70 years. So they picked a group of people that they started with a group of young men at Harvard. Then they added a very different group of young men from the Boston area. And so you had, from the Harvard group, of course, they were well educated and pretty well off. The others were, some of them were people who had to quit school and go to work at 15 to support their families, or they were on their own all of a sudden because their parents left them or died or whatever at a young age. And the whole idea was, as was in Bob's summary, what made them happy or not. And you would have things where the person you would think would be the happiest as he grew older, got married, had children, had a great career, was fairly wealthy. That person's really happy, right? No. He was the least happy. Whereas the guy who at 15 went to work as much to get away from an abusive parent as anything, and then joined the Army during World War II to continue that. But he got out of the Army, got married, had children, and happy as a clam. Wasn't well up with him. So and the biggest difference between the two, the guy who was supposedly well off and wasn't happy, and the guy that didn't have much and was happy, is that the rich guy was lonely. He cut himself off from his family. He didn't have a lot of friends. The other guy, on the other hand, was the king of the neighborhood. His kids loved him. His wife loved him. So, again, it's relationships.
In typical Jerry Pettit fashion, I didn't do the homework. I'm the one person up here that didn't read the book because I missed the memo or whatever. But I was, when I was reading what Dan just read earlier today, and it talked about how relationships are such a key to happiness. Guess what I did for a career? I was a divorce lawyer for 30 years. So I'll be bringing some different perspective maybe to this discussion. But that said, I am a happy guy, and I hope most of you are happy, but I'm sure there's some people in here that have had a lifetime of depression too. A lot of my friends and family, depression, I don't understand it. The lawyer in me always, when I've come across depression, I want to counsel them, and they say, well, this is what you should do. This is what I would say in court here. Now, no. When you run into somebody that's got depression, you nod your head and say, I hope I can make you less unhappy or something like that. Boy, did I just take a dark turn with this. I know we're supposed to talk about the good life, but I'm acknowledging that half of you are maybe not having a particularly good life. I am, and we'll talk about that perhaps more in a bit.
Talk about the breakdown of relationships. That's very relevant.
Well, yeah, and we talked about this earlier, that people should see therapists, but unfortunately therapists don't get consulted until it's like way late in the breakdown of the relationship. I don't know how to resolve that. I know you can Google now, and my marriage is falling apart, what should I do? And Google will give you some advice. You can check out some YouTube videos. I hope that life is getting better with that, and it doesn't cost a bunch of money. Therapists do cost a bunch of money, and sometimes health insurance takes care of that, sometimes not. But yeah, that's all I've got at this point.
Eleanor, I think you can bring this down to an even more basic level, and you've seen a lot of different relationships in the career you've had, but basically, you know, Jerry said, what do you tell someone who's depressed? Well, you know, basically you have to listen. If you don't do that, nothing else is possible. And somehow a lot of older people feel they can't say anything to anyone. So, you know, at both ends of the age spectrum, this kind of reluctance to seek a kind of companionship.
I was telling, I want to call him Mr. Giannetti because I didn't have him as an instructor. I didn't get to come to Tarkio. Which I'm going to start out with that story. I've been wanting to, you know, do this more publicly because I've shared this thing that happened to me when I was a senior in high school. And my guidance counselor scheduled my time, my perfunctory visit. You know, what are you going to do when you graduate from high school, Eleanor? My guidance counselor's name was Ernal Moorhead. She would have been considered a spinster back in the day. She was not what anyone would probably describe as attractive, nor was she very good at communication. She was not good at developing a relationship, essentially. But I went in and she says, well, and she had a bit of a list. She said, well, Eleanor, what do you want to do when you finish high school? You want to be a nurse, or a secretary, or a teacher? And I said, well, Miss Moorhead, I was really thinking about becoming an international secretary, bilingual, and then working for the UN. Miss Moorhead stopped, paused. So do you want to be a nurse, or a secretary, or a teacher? So obviously she was not listening well.
But she had herbal medicine.
Yeah, herbal medicine, that's cute. I actually did find her by Googling her name, probably a year ago, and I learned that she had just passed away. But developing that mindset of being able to listen to what people's words actually mean to them, not what they mean to you, but what do they mean to that other person. I think taking care of the other, attending, paying attention, being focused, looking someone in the eye, really doing that with all good intention, not just because I have to. And there are people that do that.
And that's part and parcel of what poetry does for the writer and for the listener. It makes you pay attention to things that might otherwise be missed. It's what good artists do in visual art. You know, you say, I never saw the scene that way, but I realized something now. And this is the essence, this paying attention.
Yeah, it's a good thing. We all get busy, and I bet all of us in this room have offspring and maybe grandkids and maybe even great-grandchildren that are consumed by digital devices, and I worry about that. After I left the industry of working in the insurance business, I decided to make a lot of money and become a social worker.
That's a joke.
But it was a great career, and I did mental health counseling. I worked with people that struggled with addictions of all kinds, and then got into more program development, program management, and administrative work in the field of early care and education. But I saw people from womb to tomb. That was my target audience. Anybody that was living and could benefit maybe from some support at any given time. But it's really important to model the good life by listening, by paying attention. So if you have little people that you're around, be concerned about their neurological development, because they have instant gratification today. And instant gratification speaks to neurological pathways in the brain, and they become accustomed to having that instant gratification. So we have to model something different to them and really pay attention.
It's that destination addiction again. That's a wonderful term. Really, happiness is just around the corner. And it's not because there are too many corners. Okay, I'm here. What next? What next? And if you don't find a place that you find peace, and this is what the Buddha talked about, Lao Tzu talked about, Taoism, and it's not just resignation, it's acceptance of who you are and who other people are. And you really can't listen to other people unless you listen to yourself.
The relationship part of this, as I said, is the really important thing. And as I read the book and they've talked about developing relationships, I realized that I have a lot of them. Not just individuals, but groups. I have 2 younger brothers. Love them to pieces, hardly ever see them. But I have 4 brothers sitting right here, fraternity brothers. And we connect with one another all the time, and with others who don't happen to be in attendance here. We're all here because we are in a family that developed right here at Tarkio College. Why did you come today? Because you have that familial relationship with this campus, with other students who are here. Every Tuesday afternoon, I play golf with a group of guys in Shenandoah. I lived in Shenandoah for 23 years, started playing golf with them after I'd been there about 10 years maybe. I moved to Omaha, lived there for 23 years. Every now and then I'd go back and play golf with them. Moved back to Shenandoah a couple years ago, still playing golf on Tuesday afternoon with the same guys. I'm 74, I'm one of the youngest in the group. When we're not playing golf, when the course closes, we get together at one of the guys has a shop, and we smoke a cigar and have a cocktail on Tuesday afternoon. But that's not just social time, because these are guys in my small town up there that if I need something, I know who I can call.
And it's not just in a practical sense. If you are feeling something that you need to talk to someone about, you have someone to talk to.
Dan said about half of the things that I originally was going to say, that because when you talk about relationships, you think at first male-female relationships, which I say a number about here, but relationships, maybe the most important ones that determine our happiness are those friends. And I think pretty much everybody is here and still comes to these Tarkio things because of the friendships you made and the good experiences you had with the relationships during those college years. Having said that, let me go dark again, because these are some difficult times. I've lost some friends, maybe some of the others that you, not just by a death and moving away and things like that, but I'm not going to get elaborate on this, but the political situation. We're losing friends politically. That's sad. I don't know what the solution is for that. I've made that choice a number of times. Like I'm big into Facebook and that, but I've unfollowed a number of people that used to be friends, and that even goes to families that are going through these difficult times. Am I right? Raise your hand if you think that these are difficult times as far as maintaining those friendships. So I wanted to express that so that these people can cheer us up again.
Another example. You want to know about it? COVID hit. It's terrible. Eleanor and I we just spent a little over a week in Hawaii and had a wonderful time. We got off the plane in San Francisco and somebody stuck a thermometer against my head. What on earth is going on? By the time we got back to Omaha, we realized we just read the news and all that stuff. Everything shut down. Everything shut down. My social wife here yelled at the neighbor across the street, "Hey, Stephanie, come out on your driveway, bring your glass of wine. I'll sit on my driveway and we'll have a conversation."
It was kind of loud conversation. Had to kind of yell a bit.
That evolved to more neighbors sitting on our driveway in a big circle. She started this on Tuesday, so it was
Tuesdays at 5, neighborhood thrive. Nobody was going to the office, so everybody was available at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. So every Tuesday afternoon during COVID, I don't care if it was raining, the wind was blowing. We had a gas fire pit. It's brought back to Shenandoah. It's in our backyard, nice big patio. We sat out there there were about 4 that showed up at Tuesday afternoon. It was 20 below zero and snowing. 5 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, we were there. We moved from Omaha to Shenandoah a little over 2 years ago. The people we sold our house to are like friends to us now, but they're still doing it. Not every Tuesday anymore, but they still do it. I made a sign, actually, that we put in the yard to let people know we were ready to go. It said 5 o'clock, right? He still has it. He puts it out, and they're going to do this.
Let me bring this to a literary sense. I have at my house every other week a bi-weekly thing I call the saloon. It's I had thought of calling it a salon, as a literary salon, where important things. I thought that was a little too pretentious, so it became the saloon. Okay, and this is really important because people come in and out of that, and we talk about great literature or ideas in seminar style. We'll mostly look at literature, but then we've looked at things like the Lessons of History of Will and Ariel Durant. I highly recommend that book and another book, Fallen Leaves by Will Durant. What you get is whether or not you thought yourself a student of literature in the past, you realize in age that there are some timeless truths that it's time to take up seriously, not just for a grade or not just for a show or any of these things. It's time to dig deeper, and life is short, and I think if we look at Prospero, as I did in that last poem, Prospero was a magician. He made things happen. He solved a big relationship problem with his brother who had usurped the throne from him. He had a daughter who he had kept separated from society. She finds a young man, Ferdinand, when there's a shipwreck on the island. He has brought his brother's ship to the island called for a tempest. Difficulty, again, as Walden points out, the difficulty of making life right. And in the end, he gives up that magical power to return in happiness to his throne. And the brother is reconciled. These things have to happen. And just as an aside here, you know, everybody up here except Eleanor, who knows, who was a very wise person and knows a lot of other things, but she hasn't had the pleasure or the difficulty of being in one of my Shakespeare classes. But it is time to, you know, either take up Shakespeare or do something that really, you know, that time between swaddling clothes and winding sheet is always there, and we need to be continually cognizant of it and look for ways. You know, if I can shift this just a little bit, Dan and I and Jerry and Eleanor talked about last night. You know, there are four ways of looking at the good life aside from everything we've talked here, and that's, you know, you can look at it as the active life, which is the life of the mind, the life of professions, lawyers, teachers, etc. You can, that's the contemplative life, where you're thinking about things. The active life is, you know, businessmen making your way in the world. And then you have the hedonist way of looking at things, which is, you know, pleasure seeking. But it actually has, but hedonism has gotten a bad rap. If you're looking at trying to maximize pleasure, good pleasure, and avoiding pain, that's one way of looking at life. And then there's this final one, which I think people participate in an awful lot, and that's the fatalistic way. What is it, fatalism? Well, we're all going to die. I don't care. I can't figure out. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's not a question I'm concerned about. All this kind of stuff. You know, what happens, what happens. And it's not a happy c'est la vie, c'est la vie. It's fatalistic. So we can take this conversation in another turn here, and maybe it's time to hear from the audience. What would you take away from this conversation amongst us?
I'll go just to start it. The COVID year was an interesting year, and I'd been in Omaha to visit you, and I could picture where the sign was and the invitation to the neighbors. But it was also a year in which many of us looked at that as an opportunity, as you did, right? And I realized that I've lived on the same street, same house for 39 years. And there's a few elderly neighbors up the way. Now, elderly means probably not much older than I am, right? There's some people that I actually really didn't know any more than seeing them go get their mail. And as soon as COVID broke, next time I saw very quickly saw Tom, I didn't know his name, at the mailbox. 39 years living on the 2 houses away, you know. Neighborhood was good, streets good, you know, it was good. And I walked across and I said, you know, sir, I said, well, I didn't call him sir, but I put my hand out, introduced myself, and I said, I am so sorry. I said, I have never done what I've done today. And I extended my hand, and to this day, he and a couple other guys, we are great friends. He likes seeing the grandkids. When the grandkids come down, we might take some tomatoes down or share some jalapenos or whatever. Found out, everybody's got a story, and found out he was the head of Midwest operations for the Secret Service. He's a wood carver, amazing, and what a world opened up. And what new solid relationships we have, and so we see each other. There's just, in that little block, we went from happy to joyful, just by that type of an effort.
The book talks about, I guess you call it an acronym, WISER, and I can't remember what each of those letters represented, but it's like being watchful, interpret what it is that you're observing or seeing. S, I believe, is select. So understand that, you had a choice to ignore this neighbor or to engage with that person. And in doing so, I would bet that you made them happy.
Absolutely.
And when we can help give comfort and support and love and share ourselves with others and really look them in the eye, be close, that makes us happier.
Exactly.
We get a lot from being able to pay attention to the other.
You mentioned earlier, I'll be quiet here in a second, but what I want to say is you mentioned earlier about how important this relationship is, and relationships are at the crux of this, lack of a better word, joy, right? But let's understand that everybody has a story, and that person might have really needed a new relationship because there's nobody in that person's life, and so
And loneliness is now.
that's the
a
point. So we're pals now, and when
diagnosis
one
of
person's
DSM.
out, now we're all coming out. And I know other neighborhoods act that way interactively, but it's anew in this house, this block of 10 houses. It's refreshed because of that. Because it made me feel great, but I can't imagine how it made Tom feel or Ron feel. It made them feel great too, is the point. Because they're not isolating anymore. They have a reason to go out front and stand there and water the grass until somebody comes out. So I'll be done.
That's good. So wiser is watch, interpret, select, then engage. And then once you do that, take time, really just take time to reflect on that relational experience, not just, blow it off.
I got a gentleman back there.
I'm not disagreeing with anything anybody has said by this question. So my question is, in the book that you're talking about, The Good Life, does it delve into the good life having a component of a relationship with God?
Yes.
It's only one of the many relationships, and I think what we have to accept is that there are people who really define the relationship with God in different ways, in more human-based ways. If you look at Buddha or Lao Tzu or Emerson, Thoreau, there's a relationship to nature, and if God is anywhere, he or she is in nature, and yes, there are people who are believers and they're noted in the book, but the variety of relationships needs to be taken into account, and the prejudicial aspect of people who don't believe in God against those who do, and vice versa, is something that's an obstacle, very, very much like our obstacles that are afoot today in our politics. I think the divisions are real serious, and And yes, there are different ways of finding a higher principle. And it's not necessarily a higher principle, it's finding out who you are and why you believe what you do.
When you talk about engaging, I think a lot of times we see something that we guys probably do this, but we don't engage. And I think we need to live a life of service. If you're looking to your fellow man or woman, do something for them. I mean, everyone has needs. And when you're engaging in them, you forget about some of your own depression and some of your own problems because you've got someone else to think about.
Service can be as simple as a hello walking in a grocery store.
To a stranger.
Anytime you can get outside of yourself in service of another I have found to be extremely rewarding.
One of the biggest differences I noticed after we moved to back to Shenandoah from Omaha, I don't care who it is, driving down the street, walking down the street, everybody waves. Yep. Everybody waves.
Or they do the farmer.
Yeah, the farmer wave.
Farmer wave.
Yeah.
The two fingers up the steering wheel.
I'm not sure how this is going to be taken, but there's some people that are incredibly affable and really want to be around a lot of people, and there's others that are more reserved. Take my husband, for instance. We'll go to a store and he'll manage to find somebody who's going to talk to. And I, on the other hand, I manage to hide. And I think it has to do with personalities as well. Like, some I call are takers and some are givers. And when a giver has given enough, they put a stop to that. And it's not that you don't want to be friends with people, it's just that you're drained. And I'm not sure how that relationship works with this book and all together. But I do have to bring that to everybody's attention.
No, I agree with that. And that was when I first started reading the book, I thought, how did they measure personalities? How did they, factor in the metrics in the research? And they did, but when they're talking about the good life, that's kind of, you can be very introverted and still have relationships and still have a great life, right? But you're right, some people, I'm much more social probably than he is. And, but that was my environment growing up. My mother was a very social person. From the age of 6, I was performing at church, playing the piano, singing. My mother was a musician. I had a lot of musicians in my family. So I just grew up with that kind of an environment. Now, my dad's side of the family, not so much. They're more stern. Like I tell him, he can, work for the Secret Service with the looks that he has on his face sometimes.
Something that we haven't talked about that I think is an increasingly big factor in relationships is technology. The staring at the phone thing. On the other hand, dating sites are on the internet now, and it's easier to meet people that way. You've got, what are the organizations that are not dating, but I can't think of the name of them. Just service communities that you can join and just be in a new group if you're kind of on the shy side. But a lot of this technology is driving people apart too, just staring at the phones. And this Generation Z, they say, real problem, particularly with the young men, on loneliness and being able to function out there in society.
And AI is not the answer. I mean, in one sense, I think of AI as just a super Siri or a super Google. There is very little difference. And what I want is fact, not interpretation. AI is attempting the process of giving interpretation. In my own case, I published some poems on Facebook, and the little AI button has appeared. And it's amazing. They talk about every award, every place I've been, and all this stuff. And then it says, but he's also a medical doctor on Long Island. And they've conflated me with that person and say, he's really an unusual medical doctor because he's done all these things.
It's crazy.
A few years ago, I was working for a new career, and I was taking a course, continuing ed course in Jefferson City, and one of the instructors was Mel Rogers. I used to be assistant dean of students here. Well, I introduced myself. He said, "Oh yeah, I remember you." So why don't we get together for beer this evening? So we did. And through the conversation, I said, I always heard about the Tarkio experience. Everybody I talked to talked about the Tarkio experience through the professors. And I said, what was the Tarkio experience? He said, the art of compromise. You're going to compromise, you've got to get to know the person. And he said, those people who did learn that didn't last. They were gone within a year.
Well, I think we got to realize one thing. There's a communication here. It's about listening. We don't listen enough in our society today. I learned a lesson about 22 years ago. It's really made a big impression on the way I talk to people. I was, at that time, industry just fell out of the bottom of Pittsburgh. I mean, every manufacturing base lost a lot of people. Plants closed and everything. So I took a job working for a theater group. Fundraising, as I'd put it. And the illustration to show that we don't listen enough is, as you call to make a pledge for someone to just maybe give a little bit more than they gave last year, you usually start your conversation as, "Hi, Mr. Johnson, how you doing?" And you're supposed to listen before you go on. If he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, my wife passed away last week," and you say, "Oh, fine. Well, the reason I'm calling," you just went straight over the problem that he was having. The idea is, you get a response, you should work on the response before you go on with your idea. And our problem is today we jump ahead of where we want to be. I mean, you have to listen to people. I mean, even people you don't like, you still have to listen to them. You know, if you want them to listen to you, you have to do the other half too. And this is our society today. We don't listen.
It's been for 50, 60 years, though. This has been evolving. I mean, the whole thing in a good sales organization, which I was in sales most of my life, was they're trying to teach you how to listen. And you run into these folks all the time. Wayne touched on it, but, you know, you need to be figuring it, you know, sincere. What did Eleanor say? The most important thing you can do to show somebody you're listening to them is to look them in the eye. Not thinking about,
in other cultures.
Yeah, not thinking about your next question. Not thinking about where you're going to go to.
Exactly.
I mean, and sometimes maybe in sales, I was a pharmacist, I had 30 seconds to talk to a doctor, usually. But guess what? Because I listened, because they trusted me over years, I would get 20 minutes. I'd get 30 minutes. I have relationships today because I even talked to my boss and no, we're not making sales today. We're still developing that relationship. And yeah, it was for a business purpose. It actually turned into friendships. So this has been going on a long time. Dale Carnegie used to teach.
No, I was just going to.
And I hate that because
I was just going to mention Dale Carnegie
thing was, you always know I have a friend who does this. They're not listening to you, and their response is, "Oh, that's interesting. Thank you, Dale Carnegie, for teaching me to respond that way." They're not paying attention to you at all.
No,
Run away from them.
And you know, in many cases, Dale Carnegie has done some good for people who don't know how to listen.
Sure.
But in the other sense, it's very transactional.
Yeah.
He's saying, you've got, and this is one of the books we do in the saloon too, and have this kind of discussion. It's so transactional, and you know, the big question, and you have to ask it all the time, what for? what for? What are you listening? Why are you listening? And that's amazing that you were able to keep those relationships, because that goes far beyond Dale Carnegie. You know, I did notice some departures here. I guess we've been cackling on here, but I mean, this, you know, I do have to say, I don't know many places outside of Tarkio which meant so much in a developmental sense to me that you can do this. And I'm so proud of my 70-year-old students. and really, I mean, this, the things that I did throughout my life were so very, had the germ of meaning right here. And it was the relationship with the students. It was really having the medium of the subject matter. And I cannot believe how many people say, oh, great Shakespeare course. and it was a great Shakespeare course for me. And I think, I would hope that my enthusiasm, well, I guess it did last for a while. You know, half a century, but it's good to be back here after half a century, believe me. And I'm proud of this place, proud of my work at this college over 50 years ago, and really gratified to see you all here. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Meetings at 4. Bill?
I enjoyed the poetry, sir, but the idea of a rusty stovepipe that's falling apart from decay and a colonoscopy